Oh, welcome back to the Spiro Avenue Show. It's been a hot cooking time around here, man. We've had a lot of stuff going on because there's a lot of stuff going on. And when times get busy, we get busy with them. And we got a lot to get to today. It's a momentous occasion to be sure. But first, we got to remember who's keeping the lights on around here. It's not the guests. It's not Ben. It's certainly not me. It's the sponsors. Good one today. Good friend of mine today. Superior Home Lending, Michael Fick. He's the man. If you're going through that home refi, if you bought those tickets to that Michigan-Ohio State game yesterday, went deep and hocked to get them at the 50-yard line, you got to pull some equity out of your house, whatever you got to do, no matter what our guest says about it from a financial perspective. Go ahead and do it. Call Michael Fick. He's the man. SuperiorLoans.mortgage, 616-299-9275. Highly recommend dealing with this guy. Michael's a good friend of mine. He's actually quite legitimately, literally doing my home refi right now. He made fun of my high interest rate. He laughed for 10 minutes, and then he said, we got to fix it. He's doing it right now. Call him, apply, see if you qualify. Again, that's Michael Fick, 616-299-9275, NMLS number 1159792 at nationwidelicensing.org. All right, well, here we go. It's a big one today. Michigan and Michigan State wrapped their regular seasons. They were quite fantastic regular seasons, and first, foremost, I guess we'll have to say congratulations begrudgingly to Michigan. Hell of a year. I think they were legitimately the best team in the Big Ten. I think that's fair. They're going to go to Indianapolis with a chance to prove it. So we're not going to talk about Michigan today. It's not a Michigan show, but wanted to get that out of the way, frankly. So congrats to Michigan. We have a lot of Michigan people in our audience. So good job. Enjoy St. Elmo's. It's a blast. So what a time to have the guests today. This is a great time for this because there's press clippings of this guy all over the place. I feel like I booked one of the Kardashians on the show. He's hot right now. Let's face it. He was a legend before this week. He's an even bigger legend now, making his second appearance on the Spiro Avenue Show. It's Brian Mosallam. How you doing, man?
I mean, what kind of introduction is that?
You don't like your introduction?
No.
It's a hell of a red carpet
Just
for
a
you.
regular guy. Happy to be here. Thank you for having me. Appreciate you.
It's a pleasure to have you. It's great to have you back. The last time you were here was a little over a year ago, and it was in September. And normally that would be in the middle of the season, but that was before the season because it was a COVID year. And you were the one guest, the only time at that point, and it hasn't happened since, that I had my cell phone right next to me because I told you my wife could go into labor at any minute. And so I said, forgive me, guys, if I get up in the middle of the show, that's why. So you came under those pretenses. You were cool with it. As it turns out, literally the next day she did go into labor. So she held out just long enough to get that first episode in. The framing of the show when you were here, we were right off the Luke Fickell, flirtation, falls through. Mel Tucker ends up coming here. And you and I, it was a Mel Tucker heavy. We talked about, your work as a trustee with the Nassar stuff, but the body of the show mostly was the Tucker thing. And I think, where we are now, it's incredible. It feels like you were here 5 years ago. I mean, so much has happened. The program has come so far. I want to start with, obviously, we all know Mel Tucker extended for 10 years, $95 million famously. We'll start with just the statement. I see this statement from Mel Tucker come out announcing the extension, which we all knew was coming. I'm not going to read it verbatim. We'll throw it up there for the visual listeners, but I'm reading this just on his Twitter feed. I didn't know this part was coming. I knew the announcement was coming, but Brian Mosallam makes the cut in the body of the statement. It's the mentorship and friendship of Matt Ishbia, Steve St. Andre, Brian Mosallam, and Jason Strayhorn were particularly valuable during this process. It's been invaluable to him. So I saw that just as a friend of yours, and I know how important you are up there, but I'm like, all right, Brian Mosallam made the cut. I was very happy for you. And I think, when we look back at the interview that you and I did last year, I don't know if you're a genius, if you are just as plugged in as everyone seems to think. You tend to downplay it, but you nailed it last year, man. You really nailed it. I'm going to get it into your lap in a second, but I just want to look at these clips of you last year. So we talked a little bit about the waffling flake thing, and we set that up, and you were defending that, and I understood where you were coming from of look, we don't want a waffling flake. We want a guy who's committed. This is what your response was when I was talking about the process of looking for the next Michigan State football coach, which was clunky at first and ended up going great. So we'll start there.
Well, listen, Spartan Nation will appreciate. We want a guy that wants to be here. I mean, we want a guy that would walk here. We want a guy that looks at this job as a destination job. And I'm talking in general. That this is a destination job. This is a landing spot. This is not a stepping stone. So, these are the corner. This is the corner. That needs to be the cornerstone of this university. While in the initial surge, people, were upset. I turned out to be right. That we want a guy that would walk here, and that's Mel Tucker.
Well, you certainly look brilliant now, Brian. So, he really did. You knew all along he wanted to be here, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've been hearing his name for realistically for 3 years. His name kept coming up with people randomly walking up to me, telling me Mel Tucker wants to be the next head coach here, and I'm like, what we got? Mark D'Antonio's our coach. Mark D'Antonio's our coach. Literally, I'm talking 3 years before we hired him. This kept coming up every year, now and then, from somebody. And I didn't even know who he was until I started doing my own research and understanding. And then obviously when the job opened up, he was front and center and did a really that's, I mean, we talk about wanting somebody that wants to be here and be in a destination job, when I stand by what I said back then, that he would have walked here.
Yeah, I want to say I was on board with Mel Tucker from day one, but I can't lie because I don't delete tweets and then, unless there's a typo, and then I repost them. I don't delete tweets. And, I have one out there that's a doozy. I mean, it was the first reports of Michigan State's interested in Mel Tucker before Luke Fickell had publicly rejected us and all that. I had a tweet that just said, "Why is Michigan State giving Mel Tucker the time of day?" Which is extremely embarrassing in hindsight. But in my defense, within like half a day after reading into him, I was like, oh, okay. Because he was the guy that was a struggling coordinator in the NFL. I remember him with the Bears. I was in Chicago actually at the same time he was there. I lived there. Like, they hated him there. And I looked at his record at Colorado. It's like 5-7. So I'm looking at like, oh, we're Michigan State. Like, we're down right now, but we were in the college football playoff 4 years ago. We can do better than that. And then when you actually dig beneath the surface, I was sort of the other way, where it's like, not only do I want him here, and I'm worried that he'll leave because he's going to do too well and we're not going to back him. I mean, so I was kind of like you, maybe more of a naysayer, you're more of a positive guy, but I was kind of like, what the hell is with this guy? When you dig beneath the surface, it was sort of predictable, I think, that it would go pretty well, although not as well maybe as we thought. I actually said in that show, which I was researching for today, I couldn't believe it. It was kind of funny. I actually laid out the scenario that Michigan State goes 10-2 in year 2, and he's going to leave. Like, that was my fear. We'll play that, then we'll get into that. So, Ben, let's throw that up. My fear is, good problem to have. If he has that level of success where those programs want him, that's great. I mean, that means good things are happening here. But I do have fear. He has been a vagabond. He's never stayed anywhere for more than 10 seconds. Do you have any fear that you think it's a landing spot? Do you have any fear they go 10-2 in year 2 and he's just gone?
I don't. I have no doubt in my mind he's here for the long run, and there are reasons why that I know that I'm just going to refuse to discuss. But this is he loves this place.
Okay, so we're a year later. I love that I laid out the scenario if he goes 10-2 in year 2. And everyone's going to want him, which is exactly what started to happen. I mean, we laid out, I kind of stumbled into that. I didn't think it was going to happen. But we stumbled into this hypothetical coming true. And that's a hell of a vindication for Brian Mosallam right there, because I laid out the exact scenario. And the surrounding circumstances where, yes, the buzzards are flying around trying to poach him to LSU. CBS Sports had a report the other day that he actually intended to interview with LSU and was waiting for the call, and that was going to happen. I don't know if you know anything about that, but I don't know if you can speak now to a year later. You mentioned in that clip a year ago, there are reasons that you knew, look, 10-2 or not, like, he's not going. Can you talk about that now? Any more background on why you were so confident? Because to me, that was in real time kind of crazy to think, oh, he'll definitely stay.
Well, I mean, I knew that he had I knew that he wanted to be here, first of all. For 3 years, this was his dream job. I knew that because he's from Cleveland. He knows the Midwest very well. His dad attended one of his first games since 2008. So I know the roots of where he's from, where he wants to be. I know that he thinks he's going to compete with Ohio State in the state of Ohio recruiting. He's going to compete with Michigan, and he believes that we have the resources. And I just knew that this was a landing spot. This is a job that he always coveted.
You were, I mean, throughout this process, because I watch your show on Woodward Sports every Tuesday. It's fantastic with the aforementioned Strayhorn. But from that appearance in September of last year, before the season started, and every time you've been asked about it since on a microphone, to you, it's fine. Like, he's staying. You were the only one. I actually know people within the program that had some legitimate fears, people that are connected, that are on Michigan State's payroll, which, you're not. Like, I was amazed by, not to, hype you up too much, but I was amazed how stoic you were about the whole thing. Because I, as a guy who has 2 commissioned pieces of art of the guy and a giant blown up HD picture of him hanging in the bathroom, I was worried I was going to have some stuff on eBay pretty soon looking for an LSU fan to maybe, poach it. Like, I had a lot of fears about this. Why do you think this is a destination job for him? Because he's done the SEC thing. He's been in Bama and Georgia and LSU, not LSU, but he's been all over. Is it just he's a Midwest guy? Is it really boiled down to that? What is it about Michigan State specifically that he was drawn to it, do you think?
I think his Midwest roots. I think he's a GA here. Him starting his career here, he has affinity for this place. I also think along the way he's developed. He understands donor relations, and he was able to really strike real relations. He's not transactional. He's very relationship oriented. So I think obviously the 2 gentlemen, Matt Ishbia and Steve St. Andre, had a lot to do with him staying here. Mel Tucker never asked for an extension, by the way. First of all, this is something that just organically came up. So so that we're clear, I mean. He never interviewed with LSU, never showed any interest to LSU, always said the same thing. I have no intention of leaving. This is a destination job. So I had no doubt in my mind, but we just had to keep reaffirming with the people, because anybody can throw a report out there, right? And it gains traction and social media blows up. But he's had every intention of staying here from day one.
Yeah, he's maintained that, and he gets shit, I think, because of the Colorado thing, which I understand. First of all, I don't know who out there on the planet, who are these people that are going to be turning down someone doubling your salary? That was before this extension. Now it's quadrupled. But who's going to turn down someone doubling your salary, and not just the money, but giving you more to work with? You have a nicer office. Like, I mean, maybe not as nice of a view. Colorado's beautiful, but everything else was an improvement. So I think that was sort of one component of why people were concerned, because Michigan State fans love this guy. We don't want this guy to go. We want to tie him to the chair and say you're staying forever. I think that was a component of it. Another component was Nick Saban in 1999. You had a lot of parallels where, he had been a coach prior, was at Toledo, but this was his first at Michigan State relatively major job, and had some success early. We saw there's a lot of similarities. Had been here prior. Tucker's at Colorado for 1 year, 5-7, but a lot of good momentum. And you have the same thing where it's the same school is in the rumor mill. LSU ended up happening with Saban. I think the combination of just general paranoia, we love the guy, and the Nick Saban sort of correlation there, some of the similarities, instilled a panic there. What I got from you, and everything I ever saw from you, was this sort of quiet assurance where you weren't panicked. You knew they were going to step up. You said that Mel Tucker never approached them, which I thought was interesting. So we, the collective Michigan State, the power players at Michigan State, approached him. How did that go? How did that sort of conversation start? Because Mel Tucker apparently didn't start it. Maybe did his agent say something? Did Matt Ishbia call him and say, look, son, you're not leaving. We got to keep you here. We love you. How did that go down?
Let's just say that a combination of a lot of things. But I mean, really, a lot of credit goes to Matt Ishbia and Steve St. Andre. I mean, they built real relationships with Mel, and they're not transactional in nature. They're quiet, humble. Mel Tucker went out and got his own raise. I mean, they're giving money to Mel Tucker. I mean, because of the relationship that they built with him, and the trust and the bond. And so, I think really a lot of the credit goes to them. Most of the credit goes to them for really, really stepping up, and to Mel, getting into the inner workings of what and how and all that happened. It wouldn't be fair to put it out there. But I really think that we as Spartan Nation owe a ton and a debt of gratitude to Matt, to Ish, and to Saint, because they really stepped up. And one thing that Mel said to me that was very interesting, right, is that in his 25 years, he's never met guys like these guys. That they're no ego. right? They're not going to demand things. They're not transactional. They're not going to kick their feet up on your desk, tell you who to play, who to recruit. They're really relationship driven, and it's for the love of the school and how much they love him. And I mean, he's never met guys like that, because if you think down south, I mean, let's just be honest, in the SEC, the boosters run the show. I mean, they'll walk in your office, they'll kick their feet up on the table, they'll tell you who they think you should be playing, what plays you should be calling. Those two guys will never do that. Those two guys, that's not who they are. And he's just never ran across guys like that. And really a lot of credit goes to those two guys for keeping him here and making sure this thing is a long-term, huge commitment, that Michigan State's at the big boy table now.
Yeah, I read and listened to some of the takes on this on a national level regarding the booster relationship. And I was actually going to ask you about that. You got ahead of the game. I read the take often that, okay, look out, Michigan State. You're getting in bed with these guys now. Mitch Albom actually had this article locally. It was all over nationally, too, the same opinion. But Mitch Albom had this article, which I didn't realize we'd be bringing this in, or I would have had it pulled for a quote. But I was kind of flabbergasted that he's coming down from the Temple Mount. We hear from Mitch Albom like once or twice a year. He has a lot of opinions about things that he doesn't pay attention to 364 days out of the year. And Mitch Albom's opinion was essentially, okay, like deal with the devil, take the money, keep your coach. That's all great, but now you're beholden to the donors, you're beholden to the boosters. So if Matt Ishbia or Steve St. Andre doesn't like the play calling, he might be calling into the locker room at Spartan Stadium at halftime and saying, hey, I want some more jet sweeps or whatever. I mean, that's not a fake thing, really, in the South. You said it. The SEC has a notorious reputation for these guys that go to a lot of cocktail parties, and they love nothing more than telling people over mimosas, their buddies, their other rich pals, like, hey, I got coach's number on my phone, and I was giving him an earful about that play call in the third quarter. You don't get that sense. Mitch Albom is off base, at least in this case, in your opinion, right? I mean, this is going to be, there's no quid pro quo. This is just, here you go, we got your back. There's no conditions attached other than maybe sideline passes.
I think Mitch Albom lost all credibility when he went out and defended Bo Schembechler, saying that that Dr. Anderson was a sole actor. So Mitch Albom has no credibility in my eyes, quite frankly. But he could, and the proof's in the pudding with this one, because he couldn't be further from the truth. Because these guys are not those kind of guys. They're not demanding you go 12-0, and they're not going to be in your face requesting this and wanting that and doing this, and they're not going to micromanage or ask or do any. And that's where he said, in my 25 years of doing this, I've never met real guys that believe in real relationships that are not it's just not a transaction. And that's how those two guys are. I mean, they built their companies by identifying and retracting talent, attracting, keeping talent through relationships. And so this is, there's a special bond with those three and coach. And then, Matt's obviously a very close coach, so that. But I mean, it's, those guys are all about trust, loyalty, humility, respect. And I think, I think it's coach building his relationship with them. I mean, those guys stepped up to the plate, and coach earned it because of the trust all three of them have built together. Yeah,
the sort of cartoonish portrayal of the guy down south with the straw hat with his feet up, pushing around LSU or Alabama or whatever. It just doesn't seem to apply here. I know we're biased in favor of Michigan State, obviously. Look at your surroundings, the shirt you're wearing. But I really don't get that sense. Like, I understand why uninformed people would think that, because that is a real thing. I just don't think it's a real thing here. You see the articles coming out. Who is Steve St. Andre? Like, I didn't even know who the guy was. I heard the name. I didn't really know much about him. If this guy's a showy look at me guy, why are we getting who is Steve St. Andre articles? Conversely, Matt Ishbia obviously went public with a huge company. He's a public figure by default, but I know multiple people that know Matt Ishbia. I'm not even counting you, although you'd be on the list too. No one says a bad word about him. One of my best friends from college works for him right now. She's like, I don't know, 8th on their org chart or something at United Wholesale, like VP of something or other. One of my best friends from college, great girl. Like, I've asked her, like, what's the guy like? Nicest guy ever. Like, she said, he's really unassuming, great guy. He's not going to be calling Mel Tucker at halftime or Jay Johnson, give him an earful. So I think it is the perfect marriage where you have someone who genuinely loves, multiple guys in this case, some people who genuinely love the program, They want to see it do well, genuinely support the coach, and they're not making these donations and boosting the program for their own profile or for their own ego, which is the case so many times, I think. They just genuinely want to see this work and throw their support behind it, and they have the means to do so. So, I mean, is that kind of a fair characterization?
It is very fair, and they see the halo effect, right? If men's football and basketball succeed, that all revenue flows downhill and will help other sports and will help the university itself. And they look at it as, this is bigger than $95 million in Mel Tucker. This is about MSU making a statement, sitting at the big boy table. This is about, putting lights on those windows of your house and your front porch, right? The football program, the basketball program. And this is about, really, really, helping the university as a whole, helping the athletic department as a whole. And it's really, changing the culture. Really, the biggest change is going to be for Michigan State and the administration, because they're not used to this. This is something new at Michigan State, right? Where you have donors stepping up and they're giving money. We've never seen this before. Right there, so there is a changing of the guard, so to speak, in terms of donors and donor relations, where you have a younger, more progressive, more active donor that's really more about relationships and less about transactions, and it's it's a shift, and so it's going to be interesting to see how MSU and the administration and the leadership now handle this. Right? I mean, are those in power going to worry about who has the power, if there is such a thing, right? Because there really isn't with these guys in general. I'm just saying. But really, it's really, can they adapt is the main question, and what is there really to adapt to? That's what I keep telling everybody. Nobody's going to interfere with anything. Nobody's going to get involved. Nobody. This is about their relationship with coach, and that's it. It's over. Like, let's move forward and let's build this thing together. And so it'll be. You won't hear another word from, Isher saying about this. I mean, I'm just telling you that I think it's really important that, these guys have recognized, right, where Michigan State can go with Mel, because they see his potential. I mean, these guys are in the business of attracting and retaining talent, right? That's no secret. They're successful because they've invested in people their whole life. And so this move by them to help offer their support is nothing new. It's them putting their money where their mouth is, because they believe every great organization is you invest in the people. So.
Yeah, I mean, Colin Cowherd had a great clip that he was talking about Michigan State made the rare jump where someone's like a tier 2 program, like Wisconsin, Michigan State has been, and they're trying to make the leap to a tier 1, which, he likened it to when Oregon really stepped up to the plate, 15, 20 years ago. Say what you want about Oregon. Like tier 1, it's more than a 1-team list. Are they Alabama? No, but I think they're legitimately tier 1. I mean, every year they're winning 10 games for the most part. Their resources are all there. They're incredible. They've been to the playoff. They've been on the doorstep of national titles, closer than Michigan State's gotten. Obviously, we can look at the contract on a public disclosure and say, okay, this is a big difference. This is waters we have not been in before. Other than the compensation of the coach, how do you see this manifesting? I mean, what is different from D'Antonio? Because D'Antonio, and I don't mean D'Antonio the guy, I mean the D'Antonio program. D'Antonio had 3 top 6 finishes, like 3rd, 4th, and 6th, back to back to back. The program is doing really well. Like, what's the tangible difference we're going to see, not even in on-field results, but ethos and what they do and how they do things up there?
Well, I mean, I think this is you're now embarking on a whole new era of college football. When you figure in NIL, you figure in just recruiting, everything, how everybody stepped up their social media game, how it's an arms race. So I think you're going to see a bigger emphasis on recruiting the 4- and 5-star kid. I think you're going to see probably more of a national landscape when it comes to recruiting, per se, by Mel and his staff. And you're going to see probably coaching salaries and recruiting budgets, hopefully pushing comparable to Alabama and Georgia if you want to compete, with the big dogs. But I think you're going to see a major emphasis on recruiting and recruiting classes, and you're going to see commitments from a lot of other states that we're not used to seeing because of Mel and his travels over the years. And he's been at LSU, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia. So he's been at places that have won big, and he knows what that looks like and feels like. So you're going to begin to see that, and it's going to be fun to see the transition. And And with the portal, I mean, look what happened this year, right? The over and under was 4.5 wins. You just never know what with the portal, what you land on and what you don't land on. So that's definitely going to speed up, I believe our development of our program. But to build depth, I think you're 3 years away from consistently battling year in, year out with Ohio State. I mean, you have to have depth in your front seven on defense and your offensive line. You have to be able to control line of scrimmage, like Michigan did yesterday. I mean, Michigan ran the ball down their throat. I mean, this is that you want to sit at the big boy table on 3rd and 2 on the closed end of the horseshoe. When you got 81 yards to go, you have to be able to run the ball and get a first down. And that's we're a few years away from that, but I think you'll begin to see that take place because it's our first 22 I think can compete with pretty much anybody in the Big Ten. But as you injuries you wear down and you get to go through the years because everybody has injuries. I think that's where the depth comes into play. So I think that you'll see the depth begin to develop over the years. But it's exciting times.
You nailed it on the depth. I think sort of, top heavy may be a little bit too hard. I think you actually said it better than I would have even thought to. Top 22, pretty solid. It's that back half. One guy goes down for a week or even for a couple plays. Suddenly you have a guy who, look, I'm not going to name names, but there's certain guys that are just not on this team that are not legitimate Big Ten players. I mean, they really shouldn't be playing even at like Indiana or, I was going to say Purdue, but after what they did to us, I'm not going to be smirched.
Yeah, Indiana, Purdue, hold on, they're getting better and better.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying they're not Ohio State. I mean, they haven't done anything Michigan State's done or Michigan's done historically. They're just not that. They're fine programs, but we had guys that would not play there and shouldn't play there, but were playing for us due to circumstance. I think going from where they were last year to 10 wins is absurd. I can't believe it happened. I think there was nothing to me fluky about it. They didn't have some wonky. Typically, what you see with these teams that are flukish, they'll have like a plus 22 turnover differential, and there's some randomness to it. This team was a legitimate 10-2. I mean, to me, the only one game that they had no chance of winning. Purdue game was not a great performance, but they're down one possession technically in the fourth quarter. So in that game, I just was amazed at what they were able to do. The last thing I'll say about the negotiation to get here, and I don't know how much you're going to give me on this, Brian, but I was told, and it was not by you, I was told that, yes, Ishbia and St. Andre were the big money backers. I was told specifically Strayhorn, but mostly you, the deal doesn't get done without, it was the direct quote was, Brian getting this thing across the finish line. I'm not even going to tell you who told me that, but you were directly credited in Strayhorn as well as, okay, the money was there with these two guys. You guys got it going along and got it done. Can you speak to that at all? Is there any truth to that, like what your role was? Because you were thanked in the statement. You had something to do with it.
None of that's true. No. Like I said earlier, Mel built his relationship with those two guys.
Yeah.
I think my relationship with Mel, I think being named was because I don't mince words. As you know me, I don't mince words. I think there are a lot of things that, I told Mel that normal people won't tell him, right? That are tough things to say. And I think we built a trustworthy, organic relationship where he's like, all right, the silence of your friends is worse than the voices of your enemies, right? And there were things that I think he'd be like, all right, Brian, he's straight up with me and he's gonna tell me, and just navigating the whole political landscape of the school and stuff. And I think I was able to help there maybe, but really it was more of an organic bond that all of us grew and something that we built that was just off of trust, and it manifested into. I think all four of these guys, the Stray, Coach, Saint, and Ish, are all very similar in that they're very, very relationship driven. They're not transactional, and I think that's something that you don't see nowadays. When it comes to deals like this, when it comes to a coach staying at a school, I think it's because of stuff like that were built on relationships. Really, really cemented the deal. I have nothing to do with the deal. I mean, it's their money. They deserve all the credit. But I definitely had hard conversations with Coach and told him things that probably normal people won't tell him. And I think he respected that, and we built a relationship of trust. So I think that's where that comes from more than anything. But it's Coach Tuck and those two, and credit goes to the Board of Trustees, President, A.D. Haller, everybody getting on board. And so really that's where all the credit should go.
Well, you mentioned the president. Now, Rico Beard on 97.1 had reported that the deal was on the doorstep. The only thing holding it up was President Stanley, who was, paraphrasing here, not comfortable with the money, which to me is absurd because it's not the school's money anyway. But there was some apprehension there. Now, I don't know Rico well. I've met him. I talked to him. I know people that know him. I actually know some of the people he's talking to where he's getting this stuff from. He didn't make it up in terms of, he believed that, and he was the first one to really get it out there that an extension was in the works. So I don't think he guessed right. There's some truth into everything he's saying. Did you buy the Stanley thing as an obstructionist? Like, what was the story behind that?
Well, I mean, Rico's not 100% wrong. That was a big number. 95 million is a big number, and so of course, there's apprehension. Are we doing the right thing? But understanding the mechanics of the university, the president can't stop anything. The board, it's up to the board. The board runs the show, and he can make a recommendation. But at the end of the day, the board's going to run the show. And so, no, that's not all true. He wasn't upset per se. But, there was some people were second guessing the number or just looking at it or just doing their fiduciary duty and their obligation and stuff that they had. So it wasn't like there was this big war internally and somebody won. Not at all. It was everybody meeting their fiduciary obligation, asking the right questions. There were lawyers, legalese, and when lawyers get involved, things can get somewhat complicated, right? And so you want to make sure feelings don't get hurt. And it was more of that than anything. But the Board of Trustees runs the show. And they're the ultimate sign-off, so the president could never hold anything up, and that's not true. He was not going to hold this thing up.
I heard Rico's thing live, and I immediately sent out text messages to, 3 or 4 of my contacts up there, and a couple of them genuinely were like, I don't know what he's talking about, but one did actually call me, didn't even respond, called me right away, and gave the same characterization you did to say, like, look, I know exactly what he's talking about. There was some exchange with Stanley, but I text or email, I can't remember. It's overstated, basically, that he didn't catch wind. He was informed of the numbers that were being bandied about. And he just said it was kind of like a, whoa, like, let's look at this kind of thing. Like you said, fiduciary duty. There was not any obstruction. It was more like, whoa, what are we doing here? Like, let's look at this. And that was perceived by some to be, come on, like, let's just get this done. It's not our money anyway. Like, come on, let's get moving. And he just wanted to take a look at it. If that's true, I didn't have a problem with that. I mean, you said he's doing his duty. I don't have any problem with the guy saying, hey, hold up, like, let's take a look at this, and then signing off afterwards, although you mentioned they don't even need him to sign off. But I thought that was overstated and from my conversation, so I think we are aligned there. I think we're just as a fan base, as an alumni base, as an administration up there, as unified as I've ever seen. I mean, really, in terms of supporting this guy, we were on board with this guy from day one, really. I mean, he's been heavily supported, but especially now with some of the results we've seen. What we haven't seen, though, is external support. Everyone said the guy was leaving. There was a taunt, the hashtag Tuck leaving. That was all over the place. You were the only one. I was nervous. You were the only one kind of like, it's fine. But this contract, for as much as we're grateful for it and we're clapping for it, has been panned nationally. Now, I could have pulled 100. I mean, there's not a lot of people saying nice things about it, frankly, outside of our walls, but we pulled a couple for the national perspective. We'll get to that in a second, but first let's put the numbers up for context. Tucker's in this top 10 list now, and not only top 10, but he's number 2. So this is the highest paid coaches in college football. Saban at number 1, obviously 9.75. A tick behind him, just barely. Mel Tucker, number 2, $9.5 million. And, you go down the list. Ed Orgeron right behind him, unemployed. David Shaw of Stanford is 4th. Sweeney Dabo at Clemson is 5th. Lincoln Riley, Oklahoma. Dan Mullen, also unemployed. Jimbo Fisher, 8th. Kirby Smart, 9th. And Ryan Day, 10th. So, I mean, 2 of the guys after Tucker aren't even employed. I mean, they're still on there because they're getting, they were not fired for cause. They're getting their full ride out of there. But you're in the heavy, deep water here, to use the Michigan State pun. And this was a panned thing. This was not a contract that people were amused by. So we pulled a couple. I mean, this is This is sort of interesting. Now, granted, these two guys have been kind of negative about Michigan State generally, especially the second one. But this is Dennis Dodd of CBS Sports calling the Mel Tucker extension an overpay. This is a direct quote. Quote, Michigan State is taking a huge risk overpaying for Mel Tucker, and he is overpaid. Even the man himself must admit that. Those rich boosters who are funding this contract will expect championships. Michigan State can no longer hide his little brother in quaint East Lansing, Michigan. This kind of money trumpets excellence. Now, through the body of that, he had the sort of Mitch Albom insinuation in the rest of his article that we didn't pull, that these boosters are going to have strings attached, and if they're not winning national championships by year 3, Ishbia is going to be on Stanley's lawn with a picket sign. But, anyway, we'll move on to the next one. This is Dan Wilkin, who, by the way, called Michigan State a bottom 3 team in Power 5 going into this season. That worked out well. Quote, this extension is entirely absurd. The optics of the loss to Ohio State turned out to be terrible for Michigan State. Getting exposed so badly by the Big Ten's best team does raise a legitimate long-term concern for any middle-class type of program. Is paying $9.5 million a year for a coach that won't sniff a national title really worth it? So this was a representative pair of examples. This is the feeling out there nationally. It's the feeling out there from other fan bases. There was not a lot of people saying, oh, great job, Mel Tucker, nationally, except Colin Cowherd. Colin Cowherd's the only one that said he loved the move. Everybody else was pushing back on this, calling Michigan State a middle-class program, which is kind of, to me, insane. I mean, they're not Alabama, but middle-class? I mean, isn't middle-class like 130 Power 5 teams? Middle-class, you're talking about like 50th best program. That's just insanity, historically and even, recent history. What do you make of this? Why are these people wrong to say that Mel Tucker is overpaid? Why do you have no problem with the number? Because I know you don't. We've spoken.
I don't have a problem with the number because he'll get $10 million in NFL all day long. He'll get $10 million in the SEC all day long in this market. And considering there's only 2 African American head coaches in the NFL, he'll get 10 a year all day long. So I don't have a problem with it. I think the number itself. The message itself is bigger than the number. I think it shows that we have the resources here. We have donors here that are willing to put their money where their mouth is, and that we have more than enough capability here to win championships, that this is a destination job. So I think it's the message that it sends more than anything. Again, when you go from, quote unquote, tier 2 to tier 1, you got haters and people pushing back. And when you pay somebody $9.5 million, you're going to have, you're seeing a shift in, anytime there's a shift in power, anytime there's a movement of some sort, anytime somebody makes a play like that, you're going to have naysayers. So you just got to keep chopping, right? And you got to keep doing what you believe in. And this is what they believe in. So a lot of credit goes to Mel and those 2 donors and the board, the president, the AD, specific trustees who really pushed, I got to give credit to Rima Vassar, who was very, very instrumental in this. You look at Dan Kelly was instrumental in this. Kelly Tebay, Renee Kanaki weighed in. Like there's a lot of people that were involved that thought this was the right thing to do. So, you block the outside noise and you just move on. But I have no doubt, you get imagine the message it sends to recruiting. I mean, because recruiting is a lifeline, right? You look at the message that it sent. You got all these kids right now, 4- and 5-star kids even sitting on the fence, waiting to see what happens. You got LSU, USC, Florida open, right? With really, if you look at the candidates out there, who are you going to go after? You got 3 mega jobs coming open. So, perceived mega jobs. And so tell me a better play that Michigan State could have had in this situation. Now you lock up who I believe is, his attention to detail, his organization, his recruiting, the way he runs practices. He's learned at the best, been with the best, coached with the best, taught by the best. I've been his emphasis on recruiting. I think you're going to see a difference, over the years to come. So I honestly think within 3 to 4 years we'll be saying this is a bargain.
That may be. I mean, if he delivers at that level.
Watch, just when we're competing at that level, year in, year out, with Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, just year in and year out, I'm talking. You're going to look at this deal and you're going to say it's a bargain.
And I think we've gotten close even before all this. People seem to forget this. I don't like outside of the walls of the East Lansing sort of prism. Like 2013, I could make a very legitimate argument that that team was a national championship team. They got, and look, I don't like doing the ref thing, but they got completely hosed in Notre Dame to the point where Mike Pereira, the NFL former executive, was chiming in on Twitter saying how egregious it was. But despite that, 13-1 in the college football playoff system, they would have been there. Best defense in the country and a very good offense. Like, I just, they were there. 14, finished 5th or 6th overall in the country. 15 went to the college football playoff. So we were already on the doorstep of this stuff before this massive commitment. I think you don't need as big of a push as it even seems to get there. Tucker, even when he was at Colorado, but especially here, talked openly about, look, with his recruiting philosophy, he doesn't want the sort of, he didn't say D'Antonio guys, but the, undersized, squirrely 2-star kid that's hungry. He wants the big guys, and the reason he said that is because I watch the TV every year, and I see Alabama on there, or he was on the sidelines. I see the kind of guys that make it. He has no intention of being this cute 9-10 win Big Ten program that does well and maybe shows up in Indy every 3rd or 4th year. Like, he wants to win at the biggest level. I think that's where he thinks it's going to land ultimately. And it's not as big of a build maybe as they think. What he's done this year is been such a statement. And you had an interesting tweet last night. I was laughing because Michigan State has this huge flu outbreak, and half the team's throwing up in buckets all week. It's pretty bad up there by all accounts. And you see the line in Vegas start to go more and more towards Penn State to the point, Penn State's a favorite because half the team is either injured or throwing up in a mop bucket. And, you're responding to an Adam Rittenberg tweet about the flu issues and all the flu issues they had going into the game, and all the money you look at, like Action Network, is starting to pile in on Penn State because Michigan State, who's already banged up, whose Heisman-contending running backs banged up, and their second-best receivers out, and all, Crouch didn't play their best linebacker, and all these injuries, half the team is sick. And, your tweet is great here. It said, this tweet about the flu issues may have bankrupted half of America. Go Green, victory for MSU, because this money's piling in on Penn State. The adversity this guy's overcome, where they're learning the entire playbook on Zoom and win 2 games last year that they had no business winning on paper. What they've done this year, coming in at 4.5, they end up winning 10. That is the ultimate, I think, testament to Mel Tucker and what he can do and what's to a certain extent already done. He's going to squeeze the most out of that rock. And if he's doing 10 wins with all these disadvantages, really only 1 year into the program, injuries, flu issues, all this stuff going on, what is he going to do when it's really humming in year 3, 4, and 5? I mean, do you kind of buy what I'm selling here? I think we were so impressed with what we've seen. It seems like they're just getting started.
Oh yeah, we got a long way to go. I mean, you caught lightning in a bottle with K9.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm not going to say take a step back, but you lose him's a huge deal next year. So, kids play for him, man. They play hard for him. I mean, you could just tell. There's no, they are, and I don't mean this, I hate to call them kids, disrespect them, these men. They've bought into everything that he said, right? About to keep chopping, playing hard. And they don't flinch. I mean, they really don't flinch. And as bad a drubbing as that was in Columbus, to come off of that and to be ready to play in that weather with so many injuries, whatever the reports were of flu-like symptoms, and he refuses to make any excuses for the program. And they came out and gave that effort yesterday, especially the defense. I think they gave up 7 points second half. Really speaks to the culture that he's building. It's the culture and the mindset is that these next man up. These young men believe we're next man up, and if I'm a starter now, and it's my job to do that. And so I think that last night yesterday was probably as about a big a statement as he's ever made here yet so far in terms of program win. That was a program win. There's no question.
I agree. And, Penn State, for whatever you think of them, I mean, a couple of their games Clifford was hurt or barely functioning. Are they great? No. But that, if they don't have everything go wrong for them this year, that's a 9 or 10 win team this year. I mean, they got real guys. They got NFL guys all over on both sides. And, that was a good win given the circumstances. And really, it was a double-digit win. I mean, you had the backdoor crazy, 4th and 24 to make it, semi-interesting, but they kind of took it to Penn State.
They did, second half. They did, especially.
I was so impressed by the response and just what it looked like. Again, half the team is sick. I can't imagine being out there playing with the flu in a blizzard. It's playing a good team. You just got your teeth kicked in the week prior. You're not technically playing for, any tangible thing. I mean, a better bowl, but I mean, you're not playing a win we get into the playoff or into Indianapolis. I thought it was such a statement win, and you said program, and I think that was a good way to put it. I have a lot of faith in where this thing is going. I'm bullish on them. I think it is, you sort of insinuated, it's important for us to keep some perspective. These things are almost never linear. This team could be 7-5, 8-4 next year, and there are going to be people out there, if it happens, that say, oh, like the overpay, all this. I'm in it for the long haul, Brian. I mean, that's where I'm at. I believe in what they're doing. I don't think you're going to be in this, okay, they won 10 games this year, I'm going to predict 11-1 and then 12-0. And then, I don't think, when does it ever work that way? It just doesn't. That's not how sports works, certainly not in college. But I think this team will win, if Mel Tucker stays, a national championship or come very close, be in the game. They're in the fourth quarter tied or down 3 late or whatever. I think they're going to be at that level ultimately. Brian Mosallam, in 10 years, can you tell me, do you think Michigan State is on the doorstep of winning a national title, either win one or they're tied in the fourth quarter of the championship game? Do you see them ascending to that height?
With Mel Tucker as a head coach, we will win. He will become the first African-American head coach to win a national championship, and he will do it at Michigan State.
That was at Michigan State.
He'll do it at Michigan State.
I absolutely believe you could do it at LSU.
And it's fitting, right? Because MSU was the first school to integrate African-American athletes. And so it's, in my opinion, it's only fitting that this thing comes full circle and that he wins a national title here. And so I do believe within 10 years he'll win a national title.
Oh, you sat there in that same exact chair at that same desk here confidently a year ago and said, yeah, they could go 10-2. Fine. He's not leaving. Like, we're in it. We're gonna keep him. We'll do what we need to keep him. He wants to be here. And people kind of mocked you for that a little bit. I mean, maybe it didn't catch your ear, but they mocked you to me. Like, come on. Like, if he goes 10-2, he's gone. We saw those buzzards swarming. So you confidently hit that one out of the park and barely blinked when you did it. So, I mean, when you say that, I think that's some weight that you see where this thing is going.
Because if you're going to make that type of commitment to the coach, then you have to make that type of commitment to the coaching pool. And you have to make that type of commitment for resources for recruiting and for facilities, which we have, which, Ish was the first one to kick that off. And so, this all goes together. And if this, I actually have no doubt in my mind, he will win a title.
That's just incredible. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, I grew up, you're a little older, you were on the team. I grew up, Michigan State was, let's go 7-5. It'll be fun if we have like a really good position player, Plaxico Burress or Charles Rogers or whomever, TJ Duckett, like one cool guy to root for, one or two cool guys to root for, win 7 games, and like maybe we'll beat Michigan. That's what I grew up in. When I actually got to Michigan State, I came in right when D'Antonio came in. So I was like, he and I showed up at Michigan State together, actually. Like I got into Michigan State and started there at D'Antonio's first year. So that was better, but we still haven't been at the national championship level. You got to get back into the 60s. Are we going back to the mid 60s? That's kind of what you're thinking. I mean, that'd be incredible. I said it. Top 6 finishes 3 years in a row. Arguably the best team in the country in 2013. They finished second in the country that year before all this other stuff happened, before all these other resources were in place. So it's not that absurd. You're taking one step more than you did. They were in the playoff in 15. One step more than the playground you've been on for half a decade, just not too long ago. So I buy it. I think it could get there. It's going to be big and incumbent on the people like Ishbia and St. Andre who've done enough already. No pressure on them, but I think everyone has to stay on board. You had a great tweet. We'll kind of wrap there with right after the extensions announced. You had this great time last night with at Matt Ishbia and Saint. We missed you last night, Jason Strayhorn. I only wish they would pick up the tab for once. A great picture of you and St. Andre and Ishbia. I think, with this kind of stuff in place, I think we're positioned to get there. I love the ethos of the program. I love the no excuses stuff. I love that Mel Tucker is pressed after the Purdue loss. Some questionable calls there. Hey, what'd you make of this call? They didn't review the Jaden Reed drop. He just doesn't want to hear it. I think sort of all hands are on deck here. You think they're going to get it done within 10 years with Mel Tucker here. I think this is the happiest we can possibly be with where we're at going right now. Michigan's kind of back. I mean, you got to say they're back. For as bad as they looked last year, they've been down for a while relative to their expectations. They're back. Ohio State never left. Penn State is all hands on deck too, whatever you think of them. So we're sitting at the big boy table, though. It's going to take a lot, but I think we can get there. I genuinely do.
Michigan, one thing they've done well is they've built in the trenches, and that's how they were able. I actually thought they matched up much better with Ohio State than we did. And I thought we matched up much better against Michigan because they were not, they don't have the athletes on the outside like Ohio State. They don't throw the ball down the field like Ohio State does. So I actually, playing against Michigan, I figured, looking at maybe where we were disadvantaged in the trenches in some areas, I felt like our skill guys were better, were faster, and it looked to be that way when you watch the game. So, but when I watched Michigan line up against Ohio State, I said their O-line's better and their front seven is better than Ohio State's O-line. And if they put pressure and just keep running the ball, they'll keep this game close, and that's what they did yesterday. I mean, they ran it right down their throat. So I think that's how you got to beat Ohio State. You got to build in the trenches, and we'll get there. We'll get there.
No, they know exactly. Mel Tucker looked at that running back room from last year when he said, we got to go fix this, and he went and got Walker and Joyner, and he was going after everybody to fix that. I think you're going to see something similar with the secondary this year. We'll wrap on this one point with Scotty Hazelton. I want it on the record on microphone. It's on record in print 100 times. I've been the biggest defender of Scotty Hazelton. This idea that anybody in Spartan Nation is calling for the firing of really anybody at this point to be preposterous. Please, people. Scotty Hazelton has a very good track record. Overnight took a Big 12 defense in Kansas State. I mean, overnight they were bad. Overnight they were the best defense in that conference. Now, Big 12 is a little shaky on defense, but massive improvement. Was really good at Buffalo. The personnel, I just don't think they have the guys right now to be a very good defense, but just trust the process. I mean, come on. Mel knows what he's doing. I have the ultimate faith, I think, with what we've seen so far. Just leave everybody alone right now. I can't believe we're calling for firings now. I mean, that's kind of absurd, is it not? People are wanting Hazelton fired already.
Yeah, I mean, you got. Let's let Mel coach. Leave it up to go. Scotty coach. I mean, he's an outstanding coach, and there's an outstanding staff they put together. So we'll leave it up to the experts.
I'm with you. I'm all for questioning stuff, but not on this timeline. That's absurd. And I think Hazelton's a good coach. I think he'll be fine. It'll be like when everyone was trying to run Narduzzi out of town in 2009, and everyone kind of looked dumb in hindsight. But all right, we'll wrap there. Brian, man, I know you're a busy guy. I have to get to a Christmas photo shoot myself, so I got to go get all dressed up, and my kids are going to see Santa Claus. And I know you're putting out pictures with billionaires. I'm hanging out with Ben later, so that's we all have different circles of friends.
I'm just a regular guy going hang out with my kids, and we're just blessed. I'm blessed to have such good friends, and I'm just blessed to be around a bunch of loyal, humble, got good people. We got the university. There's some good people around the university that really care, but relationships are relationships. You have to build real relationships if you really want to see this stuff through. So. I'm just happy where we're at, and on the basketball here, we'll see where the bowl goes. And Coach Izzo's teams, they seem to be getting better, so maybe we'll do that one day.
Yeah, unranked coming in, they look pretty damn good. Yeah, the Baylor thing, like the final score was 18, but the team was down like 2 buckets late in the second half. That's one of those where you were in there the whole game, you were leading at halftime. I think they're fine.
They'll be fine.
Yeah, Baylor's great. I'm not saying national title this year for Michigan State, but they're a good team, and Izzo's the guest that I just can't get. He's like impossible, but I've been working hard. I'm working on Mex Carey, so we'll keep grinding on Mex until he gets it done for me. But, I'll wrap just saying I don't care how humble you are and how much you downplay this stuff. I think you are a key figure up there. You can deny it. You can shrug. You can say you're a normal guy. But, your work as a trustee up there when you were up there speaks for itself. We talked about that last time. So I'll say what I said to you last year. As a Spartan, someone that cares about this program, the optics of it, the reputation, the integrity of it, and also wants to see us do well on the field, You check both boxes. You've had a pivotal role. Even you can't downplay your role as a trustee with the Nassar investigation and how that was becoming transparent because of your work. So I'll just say thank you for your contributions, and we're lucky to have you in Spartan Nation, Brian. Seriously,
I don't just do. Everybody does what they can. Everybody does what they can to help the school. We'll all be fine.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for saying that, and I just try to do what I can do to help. So I appreciate that.
We're lucky to have you. It's our pleasure. So thank you to Ben Augusta, the great and powerful Oz on the other side of the library wall here. Brian has forgiven our dust. We're still like in flux here with our renovation. The shelves are kind of barren. It's kind of like Jim Harbaugh's trophy case. Although I got to be careful. He's one game away from putting something in there. It's getting kind of dusty. But, Brian tolerated our dust. We got a lot of stuff coming down the pike here. Our next show coming up this week on Wednesday will be Seth Ferranti, who this guy has nothing to do with sports. He's got a Netflix documentary out. He's a producer. He was a famous fugitive. He was on the lam for a couple years. He's now become a filmmaker and a speaker and national figure guy out of Boston. I can't wait to talk to this guy about being a fugitive on the FBI's most wanted list for 2 years. He was on the run.
Interesting.
That'll be an interesting one. So I reached out to Seth. He was on CNN talking about that Brian Laundrie case with Gabby Petito down in Florida, and I just thought he was a fascinating guy. Part of me secretly was hoping Laundrie would still be on the run for a couple more weeks to have Seth in under that context, but that'll be this week. Fascinating guy, and our pre-show interview was just fascinating. This guy will blow your hair back with his stories and his connections and what it's like to be going to CVS Pharmacy when the whole world is looking for you. And can't wait to talk to him. Eric Williamson, who's definitely not in his boxers on his couch, probably rolling around with his kids now. It's the middle of the day on a Sunday as we're doing this live. Thank you to Eric, and thank you to the audience. It's been maybe not linear growth for football teams across America, but it's been linear growth here. We're onward and upward. I think we passed the 3K mark with subscribers. We're giving away an awesome, fantastic, giant picture of Mel Tucker and Mark D'Antonio. Check me out at Darko State News for that. That's going to be coming out any minute. How to win that. Again, thank you to Brian Mosallam, former MSU trustee, president of a wonderful financial company. You're based in Birmingham, I think, right, Brian?
Yes, sir.
Spartan Wealth. It's just an incredible pleasure to have you. Happy to have you back. Anytime I can book you, I know you're in high demand, but
no, I'm.
Don't listen to them.
Just check out our podcast Tuesday night straight and 8 o'clock on Woodward Sports.
You will see me in the chat most nights, by the way. If you're on the YouTube chat, I'll be
going to have you on.
Yeah, you keep saying that, but I'm waiting for that invitation. I haven't met Strayhorn, and I have a lot of respect for Jason.
He's a hoot.
I'm a fan of him. He's just a great Spartan. He's just
great guy.
Another guy I'm happy that he's
salt of the earth.
Everybody loves him.
Oh, he's the best.
Just like you. I never hear a bad word about either.
No. Yeah. He is loved. And a lot more than I am.
I hear nothing but good things about both of you. But yeah, happy to do your show anytime, in person, Zoom in, whatever. I always got big opinions, and I'm happy to hog the mic. But
love to have you.
I'll let you get back to your family. Brian, I'm going to go see Santa Claus with my kids. Spiro Avenue show. Justin Spiro, we'll see you in a few days. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.